Hey, do you want to hear a food heist?
I always want to hear a food heist.
I am so glad.
Mhm.
How far you have fallen.
I will go even further, I'm sure.
Okay, so this one happened in 2018,
Okay.
in September, in Virginia.
Okay.
Somebody came in and in a single night
Okay.
stole 2.5 tons of grapes
Ooh.
off of the vine.
Oh, wow. This is new.
The guy was getting ready to harvest. It was harvest day, and when he woke up, he saw that all his grapes had been stolen.
The grape vine vandals. The great vine vandals.
The Vindals?
Well, if you go great vine vandals, you can do a double alliteration.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good headline material.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Between sunk labor costs and lost sales, he figures he lost about $50,000. And there's no way that this could have been done by non-professionals.
So we got professional grape thieves.
He figures it would take at least 7 pickers and 2 pickup trucks following them. And they had to be grape pros who know how to harvest grapes because they couldn't have done it that fast.
Yeah, the great grape vandals, the great grapevine vandals. They have we talked about my favorite grape?
We have. Yeah.
Did anyone in the comments, Donald? I want you to go to that whatever that episode was and find out if people are telling me how I can get my Korean grapes.
Oh yes, I do remember this episode. I can pull that up.
You'll have to find it. Don't do it right now.
Okay.
But we got during our next response episode. I want to know if people told me how to get good grapes.
Okay.
If you didn't hear that episode, you can mark this one and you can tell us again if he can't find it. If
how
you're
to get
just
the good Korean grapes.
How do I get Korean grapes in Utah?
Okay.
The ones with the thick rinds that you don't eat, you bite the end and you squeeze the grape into your mouth. And they're large and they actually taste like grape, unlike the grapes that we get. How can I get these?
Okay.
They're a Concord variant. I know but they've got a special name for it. I could survive with just Concords because I think they're, I don't mind if they have seeds. In fact, that's better. It means they haven't been bred for losing the seeds, which breeds them for losing flavor. Tell me how to get my grapes.
Okay.
I have vast means at my disposal.
Does your vast means include 7 people and 2 pickup trucks?
Scar could find 6 friends.
Okay.
When we hired Scar.
A little suspicious, but okay.
When we hired Scar, we were looking for a job because Scar is not actually our security, right? Private security is an actual thing. There's certifications and there's certain things that means. He is military, ex-military and current military, and he knows about security issues. So we wanted someone who was our kind of expert, our interested party in that sort of stuff, but not really bodyguard, even though at some things he does watch out for me. I don't really need a bodyguard. But what I need is one little part bodyguard, one little part, hey, Brandon, you should do these things to secure your items. And one part, Brandon needs something done that there's no one in the job in the company who has the specialty for doing that. Someone to find that person or to do it. And so we told Scar, really his job is to be my fixer.
Yeah.
And he thought for a little bit and he's like, okay. I don't know if I would actually hide a body for you, but I understand that's the kind of job this is because Scar has a morbid humor. And so Scar, I could be like, Scar, I need 2 pickup trucks, 7 dudes, expert in picking grapes. Don't ask questions.
And he would do it.
He would do it because he would trust that I, being a moral individual, would use my powers
Not actually a vine vandal.
Not actually a vine vandal. But I might have found a place that lets you. There are places in Utah where you can pay to go for a day and pick as many grapes as you can walk away with.
Really?
Maybe, yeah. There's there over by where Emily grew up. There's orchards there, and you can just be like, there on these days, pay what you can carry in a basket yourself. You can just walk out with, go pick what you want. And so maybe we found a place like that, and I need 7
dudes.
7 dudes and some trucks so I can get my Korean grapes.
Very nice.
Scar could do that for me. I hope he doesn't listen to this episode. He's going to be like, oh, Brandon. He doesn't like people to know because he doesn't want them to notice him
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be stealth in it. He is not very stealthy. He is he's quite, you can look at Scar and be like, oh, ex-military,
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
The Suck Fairy.
The Suck Fairy, that's right. We in our last episode said we should talk more about the Suck Fairy. Is the Suck Fairy, is that an Ann Leckie thing? Who came up with that? Is that
I don't know. Some
or is it
science
Joe
fiction
Walton?
person.
Might have been Joe Walton. Go Google the Suck Fairy and see. I'm guessing it's Joe. Someone wrote an essay a number of years ago on one of the big science fiction websites about this thing that she termed, I'm pretty sure it was a she, the Suck Fairy, where when you get older, you revisit things that you loved when you were young. And you found that you have been Berenstein-Bears into an alternate dimension. You've been Mandela affected away from your original where this thing was wonderful. The Suck Fairy has come, and now it sucks.
This thing you used to love.
We talked. We think we might have had an episode where we talked about books. So we're going to try to stray away
from books.
Away from books and toward other things. We've talked a bit about foods. Are there other things in your life that, as an old, boring man, you used to love and you go back to, and you're like, oh, I should not have done this? I mean, the sum total of 80s television shows fall into this category, right?
It's very hard to go back and watch like Magnum P.I.
Yep.
And love it as much as I used to.
I used to call him Maggot Puai.
Oh, okay.
As like a 3-year-old, I would want to watch Maggot Puai.
Maggot Puai.
Yep. Why is this? Because the movies of the era largely hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The ones that we loved, you go back and you watch Gremlins. Gremlins is still great. You go back and you watch Tron. Tron is still great.
Yeah.
Even the kind of the cult classics. And of course, the things like Die Hard and whatnot are just still incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The TV shows from previous eras hold up better. Like, I feel like some of those classic TV, even though the jokes don't necessarily, because we have shifted, there's something about I Love Lucy and these things that are more timeless than Dukes of Hazzard. Why is that?
I don't know. And I will say that there are some 80s shows that I do think hold up.
Okay.
Cheers is still good.
Okay, but Cheers is a 70s show that ended in the 80s. Right? Cheers is from that whole grimy 70s taxi driver era, right? That managed to make it in the 80s. When did Cheers start? Let's see if I'm right or wrong. I put Cheers in the same era as MASH. Right?
Yeah.
And those absolutely hold up.
It ran for like 11 years.
They did.
Yeah.
And so it's going to, but I don't term those as 80s shows. I term those as holdovers from the generation when TV was still good. Before it's, right? I love Dukes of Hazzard. Watched it every week with a TV dinner, which were new back then.
Mm-hmm.
TV dinners, another one. It was so cool to get a TV dinner. Everyone's like, ooh, we can cook our dinner in the microwave.
I always wanted those at the store, and my parents never let us buy them.
We would get them, and we would get them on a TV tray, and we'd go in the front room, and the whole family would watch Dukes of Hazzard.
Nice.
So, Cheers is 1982.
Okay, so I'm wrong.
Okay.
So it is an 80s show.
Yep.
I just have it in the previous era in my head. All right, Cheers holds up.
Cheers will give.
Yep.
But Family Ties, Growing Pains,
all those
Silver
late 80s,
Spoon,
early 90s.
Most of the 80s sitcoms.
They're just terrible.
They're awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to like
Full
them.
House, dreadful.
Yeah.
Absolutely dreadful. My Three Sons, still great. That's back from the 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what it is. Maybe, are we cringing too hard about our childhood? Would someone not from that generation watch Full House and be endeared by its capsule of what it was like to be in the 80s when, John Stamos was hot, everyone had decided, and, this is what it was to be a non-normal family, typical family. Would that be, or?
I don't know.
Is it Family Ties? That's the one that I'm talking about. No, Full House. Full House. Full House.
Yeah.
Family Ties is
that was Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. I'm talking Full House, the John Stamos one. Full House is awful.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen Family Ties. in a long time. But
Yeah.
do people do like Zoomers who are watching like the equivalent of Nick at Night, where you watch the old shows and you're like, oh, these are kind of cool. They're kind of different. Do they see Full House and think that, or do they see it and cringe like we do?
I don't know. When Netflix did the Full House revival, they did like one season of it, it was very popular.
Okay.
But it was presumably also made with modern sitcom sensibilities.
Yes.
Rather than a full throwback. I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Donald, have you seen any 80s? You're a millennial. You're not a Zoomer, but have you seen any 80s? Any of those 80s sitcoms? Have you ever seen an episode of Family Ties?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen Family Ties. I've seen quite a bit of Cheers.
Okay.
Seinfeld is technically 89.
Okay. Seinfeld's is a 90s show. We are not going to count that, even though it started there, because it kicked off a full new wave of types of doing sitcoms.
Okay. Then yes, I even just pulled it up.
Do you consider yourself a millennial or a Zoomer?
Me?
Because you're right on the border.
I'm on the border. I lean more towards millennial just because the Zoomer culture that most people assign to, I'm just like, I'm so far removed from it. So more on the millennial side from just the media and everything else that I consume.
What did you think of
totally
these
fair.
terrible 80s sitcoms? Did you be like, oh, that's kind of fun that they used to think that? Or did you just cringe through the roof like I do anytime I see one of them?
I appreciated Cheers for what it was trying.
Cheers is a unicorn.
Okay.
Cheers is legit good, even still. There are rocky parts, but Cheers we have to set aside.
Okay. Then my best example is probably Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
Saved by the Bell was rough.
Okay.
I watched,
so,
I think, a
Visited
season.
by the Suck Fairy.
Yeah.
Because Dukes of Hazzard was awesome. And I watched Full House every week. TGI Friday. I watched the whole thing. Urkel, Full House, just the whole block of 2 hours of sitcoms.
What else was in TGI Friday?
I don't remember, but I do know those two were there.
Yeah.
That was early 90s. But totally visited by the Suck Fairy. I tried watching an episode. I'm like, wow.
Also, we should say it's Joe Walton who did.
Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was right
you
with
were right.
Joe Walton. You guys should go read the essay. It's funny. It's well written.
It's just on tour as well.
Yeah. What else visited by the Suck Fairy for you?
Any games?
Oh, any video games that are visited by the Suck Fairy? You go back. You know, I'm having trouble thinking of one because I like classic games and how they work. Like I can go play Adventure on the Atari and appreciate it as a historical artifact. I don't, because I grew up with games getting better and better, I don't have rose-colored glasses about how good the games used to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like each new generation, I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for it to be better, and now it is. When I bought a cartridge that had a save, because in the old days, your ability to save your game was cartridge dependent. The cartridge have a battery and a memory card in it.
Yeah.
When I got Legend of Zelda, and it could actually save my game, that was a big deal.
Yeah. Before that, if you wanted to save something, the game had to give you a code.
Yep.
And then you type it in again.
And they were long, annoying codes. The number
Yeah.
of those I had to do for Metroid. Yeah.
Did you ever play an old PC platformer called Montezuma's Revenge?
I did. I have played that.
Yeah.
I didn't do as much PC gaming back then, but I have played it. That I played Lode Runner. I played Burger Time.
I
on
remember
the computer.
Burger Time.
But I don't have they weren't visited by the Suck Fairy because they always sucked. They're just the best we had.
Yeah.
And there are parts of them, I say they suck, they don't actually. They are brilliant pieces of programming using extremely limited resources in order to create something actually fun.
Yeah.
Most of these old games are just amazing. But they're so limited that you feel like you're playing a game with your hands tied.
Yeah, and they were like Montezuma's Revenge, which is on Steam, by the way.
Okay.
You can get it. So if you want to play an old, like early 80s PC game, Montezuma's Revenge is on Steam for like $10.
It was fun. During that era, people just made games one person. made games. I went to a con once, and one of the guests of honor was the guy who made Prince of Persia. He did all the art assets. He programmed it. He released it himself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool that games back then could be like a novelist writes a book now. They could have a vision, they could program it, they could release it themselves.
Well, and some modern games are like that.
Yep.
Little indie games. Stardew Valley, very famously,
Stardew
was
Valley,
just one dude.
But of course, he had an engine.
Yes.
To build it upon. He could use Game Maker or RPG Maker to build that upon, which not to discount his achievement, because that's a fantastic game and it is a whole lot of fun. But back then, you didn't have an engine. You're just like, I gotta program this all from scratch. So, I
can't think of any games that board games.
Oh yeah, Monopoly.
All of the like grandma's closet genre of games. Monopoly and Risk and Sorry. And
there were always a few games in there that were like decks of cards that are weird types of cards that I never knew how to play. And they were always just there. And I'm like, is this actually a game? Like the French one. Do you know the French one? What's that? Millsborn.
Millborn.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's always a copy of Millborn in these grandma closets. And you're like, my dad likes that game. I'd probably like it if I knew how, but it's in French.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to play it.
Yeah. You can still get Millborn.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Rook. Isn't Rook just a deck of cards?
Yes.
I don't know how to play Rook.
There's always because the little card ones are easy to give as gifts, and grandmas just have these, and they don't take up as much space. So when they're cleaning out their closet and throwing away the ones that the kids have sat on the box 4 times,
lost all the pieces,
they don't throw away the Rook. So like Rook sticks around in the closet, and it just kind of like breeds with other copies of Rook, so that all game closets just have a couple copies of Rook in them. But I think society has largely forgotten how to play Rook, so it's kind of like its own, lost language, dead tongue. So
society may never have known how to play Rook.
Yeah,
I think they may have spontaneously generated in grandma closets.
Yeah, there's always like a Connect 4, but not enough pieces to actually finish a game of Connect 4 because previous grandchildren have done unspeakable things to those tokens.
A checker set that has like a couple of stones in it that you have to use instead of pieces. My father-in-law, my stepfather-in-law, loves checkers.
Okay.
And he found the best way to get his grandchildren to play checkers with him was he offered $20 to anyone that can beat him.
Oh wow.
And he's had to pay out 3 times so far.
Okay. See, I would get good at checkers, and that's a money-generating machine.
Well, he'll only do it the first time you beat him.
Well, that's like how the casinos kick you out if you start winning.
Yeah.
Grandpa's enticing people in to become checkers experts just so he can have people to play against, but he's not willing to pay out the bounties.
But then if you fall in love with the game, isn't that the true experience?
Yeah, do people love checkers? Your grandpa did.
He clearly does.
Yeah.
But also he was born in a time when board games were boring.
Yeah, he was born in a time when board games were the video games that they had.
Yeah.
Like, my mother lived, I think I've said on the podcast before, every summer, father was a lumberjack. They went up into the mountains where there was no electricity and no running water. And all she could do was play Hearts with her siblings.
That was his other game.
Entertainment, play Hearts.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it's my mom, was not a pioneer era without electricity and stuff. Like, she was born in the 40s or, she's a boomer. So 40s or 50s, somewhere around there. But that generation lived with generations who did predate electricity and largely running water. And they're also from Idaho, which also is kind of a generation behind.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Like, good old Idaho. So they would go and we've talked about this, right? Like, my dad he's also a boomer in generation, but in temperament and how he acts more like Greatest Generation type stuff.
Yeah.
Right. It's really interesting to see the difference between my dad, who's about 10 years older, and my wife's dad. Because my dad came from a time where if you bought a car, the man just went out and bought a car. He didn't consult his wife. He just did it. Mm-hmm. My mom had never bought a car, never been able to pick one out in her life until I bought her a car. Yeah. He said, go pick one out. Here's a check. Every other time, it's just dad came home with a car because it was what the man did.
Was just the way it worked.
The man is in charge of such things. My dad did not go to any of the births of his children, except my youngest sister, where the doctor just closed the door assuming that my dad wanted to be there, and he was trapped in the corner. My mom talks about him not wanting to be in there, but, because in his generation, you went out and you
sat in the waiting room. Smoking.
Yes. Not them because, Mormon, but, the equivalent of smoking while you're like, I've got a child on the way.
And then the doctor comes out and tells you what it is.
Yep, exactly. And her dad, 10 years later, very different experience. Went to all the births and, so it's interesting that I think that might be the Idaho effect. I think, they're all one generation behind. Mm-hmm. And so.
It could be. But yeah, board games, like I have more than 500 board games in my collection. Checkers and Hearts are not among them.
See, I bet there's a copy of Rook in there somewhere.
There might be.
They're breeding. Watch out.
Be back on a shelf.
These are not. This isn't the Suck Fairy though, because did you love a board game and then go back to it and be like, wow, modern games have changed this? I can tell you something that did get visited by the Suck Fairy in this regard.
Oh, what is it?
So my favorite Magic set for the longest time to draft was Rise of the Eldrazi.
Okay.
Don't let your eyes blur, audience. It's gonna relate. This is an excellent set that shook things up in how Magic design was done for Limited, which is where you draft and you play with your friends. It played very differently. It played very fun. It was the best one, best sets of all time. In fact, if you go and you look at best Limited sets of all time, best draft sets, Rise of the Eldrazi is going to make most people's lists. It may not be number one, but it's going to often be in the top 5.
Yeah.
We went back and drafted it. It's actually pretty bad. It is not a good draft format. The reason being that the lessons they learned from sets like that became the standard for how they do design. Mm-hmm. Then they've, over the years, refined those standards to find ways to inject that fun into modern sets just as a normal thing that they do. And so modern sets, after 10 years of refining how to make a set really great, like Original Innistrad or Rise of the Eldrazi or even Khans of Tarkir, modern sets take all of those lessons and they use them better.
Yeah.
And so an average, a set that they've released recently that is, that might be one of the weaker ones is miles ahead in fun value for drafting than the old fantastic sets. I've refused to admit this on an emotional level. I think it must have just been the Suck Fairy.
It must have been.
Yeah.
I have that experience with role-playing games. Like you, I started role-playing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
And became and still am, a huge fanboy of Palladium books.
Yeah.
And I have played all of their titles at some point or other. But today, as a person who owns several hundred RPGs,
right?
I would never play a Palladium system.
Right.
I still play the Palladium games, but I will play the Savage Worlds version of Rifts rather than the original one, because the Palladium rule set is just old. The role-playing technology has advanced so far. They have never done a second edition rule set. Yeah, and it must be the Suck Fairy, because they're still one of my favorite companies even to this day. But
run by a rogue RPG designer who does not play by the rules, even the ones he should play by, and just does his own thing and was doing it back in the 80s, or at least, it must have been the 80s, because I played in like 89 for the first time or something, maybe 87.
Palladium Fantasy might even be 70s. I don't know.
Yeah, so I see this with, I knew we weren't going to bring up books, but let's talk about a different tack. I'm not going to talk, at length again about the books that I loved as a kid that now I read and they're not that good anymore.
Yeah.
I worry about kind of generational or collective unconscious suck fairy. For instance, the Barsoom books, which I have a fondness for.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
And I've read as an adult, and I'm still very fond of them. That same way that I'm very fond of early video games that had limitations where, I can still enjoy them, but they have been ripped off so many times.
Yeah.
And I worried about this with Dune, when the Dune movie was coming out. I'm like, Dune is the foundation by which most modern epic science fiction exists. Mm-hmm. It is the inspiration for so many things. And I worried when the movie came out, there would be a suck fairy effect on the original Dune in that it's been done so much that there's no way for people to appreciate it the much way it deserves because other knockoffs have done the cliches so many times.
Yeah.
Like you can only see Dances with Wolves or Avatar so many times before the story of man from off-world goes among the local population, learns their ways, and then, leads them in certain ways can be told before you're like, this is kind of a trope and it could possibly be offensive, right?
Yeah.
I worried about that with Dune. But then we got Denis Villeneuve, who added such a great visual style to it that it felt fresh. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons I love those movies so much. Is because it let people experience Dune without the suck fairy saying, you've seen this all before.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, I think, one of the big problems with the John Carter movie is that everyone watched it and was like, I've already seen Return of the Jedi. Why do I need to watch this?
Yep, because Lucas had read the Barsoom books. Though, I think we've ranted about this before. I didn't like the John Carter of Mars for a different reason.
Which is
that they dramatically changed John Carter's character.
His character was really kind of murdered.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about that.
Yeah, we have. But I think general public would have enjoyed it if every other element hadn't felt so cliched to them. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of sad because that was one of the Pixar guys, right? It was it was Brad Bird or it was Andrew Stanton. Might have been Andrew Stanton. It was one of the Pixar guys that makes
Andrew Stanton.
Fantastic films. It was a dream project of his, and one of his chances to leap to live action. Mm-hmm. And he picked the Barsoom books, and so it's doubly tragic. And that people who are fans of classic science fiction weren't able to share that with others because it didn't translate, and also because a legitimately great filmmaker then had a flop.
Yeah,
that honestly didn't turn out. I didn't enjoy the movie either.
Which is fair.
And that makes me sad because Andrew Stanton, he made WALL-E, right?
Toy Story 2.
This is a guy who knows how to make a really good film. Mm-hmm. And something about trying to make John Carter, the process, probably can't even blame him. Sometimes you try things.
I will say for the Barsoom books, my 16-year-old found my set of John Whalen cover all the Barsoom books on my bookshelf and read Princess of Mars and actually really liked it.
Yeah, as long as you can understand, this is from a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a picture of what adventure fiction was back then. You can really enjoy it because it is such a cool mix of absolute exploitation and beautiful prose and styling that you would never see today, right? Mm-hmm. It's the George Martin of its era, where George is taking kind of the brutalist, you might call them base. It's not exploitation in him, but it's kind of almost grindhousey sort of approach to history and mixing it with really great storytelling chops. Mm-hmm. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a pulp story about a guy who teleports to Mars, decides to stop wearing clothes and fight aliens with a sword.
Yeah.
While he speaks in an elevated tongue, he's writing poetry. And it's just
they're great. But
just
just
a thing.
Now, I had a similar experience with Robin McKinley.
Oh, yeah?
With my daughter, because she read all the Harry Potter books, and she was desperate for more fantasy. And I'm like, I'm going to give you one of my very favorites. Here's Hero and the Crown.
Okay. I was going to ask if you start with the Hero of the Crown or the Blue Sword. So
bounce off of it completely.
You should have started with the Blue Sword.
I probably should have. But even then, the writing style is just very different.
It's like when I recommend Guy Gavriel Kay, I often have to say, don't go into it expecting a fantasy book like Taigana. I mean, Guy's still writing. He just sent me his new book. But don't go into Taigana expecting it to read like a 2020s fantasy novel.
Yeah.
It reads like a 90s fantasy novel. Slower burn, more time and detail on description, more time with the characters before the actual even story starts. You kind of have to warn people about this sort of thing. I feel you don't have to, but I think enhances appreciation if you're like, okay, during this era, we could do something where you spend 100 pages with the characters before the plot starts. That was just what fantasy novels would do.
And that's not really the Suck Fairy.
No, that's a different style.
Yeah. It's a generational divide.
No.
What about foods? This is kind of what got us onto the Suck Fairy idea in the first place.
Yeah, Miracle Whip, Suck Fairy. Now, it used to be a delicious, you could just eat Miracle Whip sandwich. We talked about that 3 episodes ago.
Now can't stand Miracle Whip.
Cotton candy.
Yeah.
Cotton candy used to be the thing.
Sugary cereals.
Sugary cereals.
Lucky Charms.
Cheese balls.
Really?
Yeah, I used to be like, oh, cheese balls, perfect snack. I can eat these forever. Now I eat like a handful of them, and the fake cheese taste sets in after about the 4th or 5th cheese ball, right? Where I'm like, oh, for a couple of bites, they're okay. Then the Suck Fairy realizes I'm there, and she's like, no, you're not allowed to enjoy these anymore.
Yeah, that's how I am with Doritos.
Yeah.
Doritos, they just taste artificial now, and they didn't used to.
Same thing for me. Like, you get a few bites, the same way. A few bites of Doritos, you're like, oh, Doritos, I like Doritos. And then like the 3rd or 4th one, you are tasting the piece of cardboard that this dust is dusting in order to try to convince you, that, Yeah. There you are.
That, I wonder if there was a real life Suck Fairy and they've just changed their formula.
I always wonder these things. Like, it happened to Coke that once. Like, they brought back Planters cheese balls, which were my favorite. And they tasted terrible. And I'm like, did you really bring them back? Because I wonder how much of this is like the specific factories you were making them in and the ingredients you could source at that time. Like, I can't eat my grandma's mac and cheese anymore. And maybe it's good because that dairy closed and we can't get the cheese. Though, we're out of time, but when we went to Tucson recently to the Gem and Mineral Show. Because my sister's a geologist. My father just loves minerals and making necklaces and things. And
that was in the calendar as rock show.
Yeah,
and I didn't know if it was music or minerals.
And I like to pick up like fossils for my lair.
Yeah.
And I want to take my kids and let them see the show and things like that. While we were there, Emily's like, "Well, we need to eat Mexican food. We're in Tucson." I'm like, "Utah has good Mexican food. Do we really need to?" And she's like, "Yes." The Mexican food restaurant in Tucson was like just leagues better than the ones. And I think part of the problem is the ones in Utah, there's good restaurants, but they're all the same recipes. It's like there was one family that now generations later, they've passed the recipes and you can't get different kinds of food. I mean, you can get you can go to like original Mexican taquerias, but I'm talking about like your hole in the wall, normal Tex-Mex American, they're all the same.
Yeah.
And they were just using completely different spices, new flavor palette, and things, and it was so good. And they had on my chimichanga I got a yellow cheese that was rubbery and flavorful and stringy in the way that my grandma's cheese was.
Oh.
So here's another thing for people to put in the comments. What cheese do you think they were using? It was a chimichanga. They just put a big, long slice of cheese on it. It was a melty cheese, but it wasn't like a Velveeta or American. It was like a real cheese. And it was a little bit like you got it and it stretched, but it wanted to snap instead of like completely string out like a mozzarella.
Was it a slice or was it a cheese sauce they poured?
It was a slice. It was not a sauce.
Okay.
It was actually, they cut a slice from a large brick, I could just tell, and laid it on top when they, after they fried it, and then the heat of the fry melted it on.
Okay.
They didn't even, and like, it was the best cheese. It was a salty cheese, which Mexicans like salty cheese, and this was a salty cheese. It was a yellow cheese. It was a rubbery, bouncy, really flavorful sort of cheese, cold cheddar, Colby something. It was not a sharp. It was a creamy cheese.
Okay.
And I want to know what that cheese is because I bet that'll make a really good mac and cheese.
Probably. Okay.
So you got the internet. You have another assignment. Find me my grapes and find me my cheese. Tell me what cheese that is. People from Tucson, tell me what cheese it is.
How's that, Tucson?